The gunshot echoed across our lawn as my disabled daughter Willow collapsed, blood soaking her shirt. Barbara, our HOA president, stood trembling, gun in hand. "She wouldn't stop picking my roses," she shouted. Then she saw my badge on the ground. Her face went pale. "Sheriff?" Before watching full story, comment below from where you watching. Also like and subscribe for more Karen stories. The sound of the gunshot shattered our peaceful Saturday morning. One moment, my 13-year-old daughter Willow was sitting in her wheelchair on our front lawn, carefully picking flowers for her science project. The next moment, her terrified scream cut through the air as she clutched her stomach, blood already soaking through her favorite purple t-shirt. "Willow!" I shouted, dropping the garden hose and sprinting across our lawn. Time seemed to freeze as I saw Barbara Evans, our neighborhood strict HOA president, standing at the edge of our property, a small silver pistol trembling in her manicured hands. The smell of gunpowder hung in the air. "She wouldn't stop picking my prize roses," Barbara yelled, her face flushed with anger. "I told her 3 times those flowers are protected by HOA rules. No one is allowed to touch them." I fell to my knees beside Willow, gently moving her hands to see the wound. The bullet had entered the right side of her stomach. Blood pulsed steadily from the hole. Willow was born with spina bifida. She'd spent her whole life fighting to move, to be included, to be treated like any other kid. Now she was fighting for her life because our neighbor cared more about her flowers than a child's life. "Daddy," Willow whispered, her face pale with shock, tears streaming down her freckled cheeks. "It hurts so bad. My stomach feels like it's on fire." "I know, sweetie," I said, trying to keep my voice steady while assessing the wound. I pulled off my t-shirt and pressed it firmly against her stomach. "Help is coming. Just stay with me. Keep your eyes open and look at me." With my free hand, I pulled out my phone and dialed 911, my fingers slippery with Willow's blood. "This is Sheriff Mike Taylor," I said, my voice instantly changing from terrified father to commanding police officer. "Emergency at 457 Pine Street. Shooting victim is my daughter, age 13. Gunshot wound to the abdomen. Shooter is still on scene and armed." Barbara's face went white when she heard my title. The gun dropped from her hand onto the grass with a soft thud. "Sheriff?" she gasped. "But you're just the quiet man with the disabled girl? You never said anything about being a sheriff. Put your hands up and get on the ground now," I shouted, pulling my off-duty gun from my ankle holster with one hand while keeping pressure on Willow's stomach wound with the other. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat, but years of training kept my hand steady. Barbara slowly lowered herself to her knees, her expensive white designer pants getting grass stains. "It was an accident," she said, her voice shaking. "She was destroying my award-winning roses. I paid $300 for each bush. I sent her 3 warning letters last week about touching community property. I'd lived in Sunny Creek Estates for 3 years, and most neighbors just knew me as Mike, Willow's dad. Few knew I was also the county sheriff. I kept my work separate from home life so Willow could have a normal childhood without people treating her differently because of my job. Now, as neighbors ran outside to see what happened, I was both roles at once, a terrified father and a law enforcement officer, my bare chest and hands covered with my daughter's blood as sirens wailed in the distance. Mr. Johnson from next door ran over with clean towels. "Mike, let me help," he said, taking over, pressing the towels against Willow's stomach wound while I kept my gun trained on Barbara, who was now sobbing loudly. "I didn't know you were the sheriff," Barbara kept repeating as if that would have changed her actions. "The HOA rules clearly state no picking flowers from community gardens. Section 8, paragraph 3. She was breaking the rules." I couldn't even look at her as I read her rights, my voice mechanical while my heart was breaking into pieces. This woman had shot my child in the stomach over flowers. Over stupid rules she mostly made up herself as the HOA president, a job nobody else wanted because it was all paperwork and complaints. The ambulance arrived within 5 minutes. The EMTs looked shocked when they recognized me. "Sheriff Taylor?" "It's my daughter," I said, stepping back so they could work. "Willow, 13 years old. Gunshot wound to the stomach. She has spina bifida." The paramedics worked quickly, cutting away Willow's blood-soaked shirt to reveal the bullet wound in her stomach. The entry wound was small but deadly. They placed gauze over it, started in 4, and carefully transferred her to a stretcher. My deputy, Officer Miller, arrived with 3 patrol cars. He took one look at Willow on the stretcher, at me standing shirtless and covered in blood, and at Barbara still talking about HOA violations, and his professional face almost broke. "Sir," he said quietly, taking Barbara into custody. Go with Willow. I'll handle everything here. The ride to the hospital is still a blur in my memory, Willow's small hand in mine, her favorite rainbow bracelet bright against her pale skin, the oxygen mask fogging with each labored breath. The paramedic working quickly and quietly to keep my little girl alive, checking the stomach wound and monitoring her dropping blood pressure. Dad. Willow whispered from under the mask. Am I in trouble for picking the flowers? Tears ran down my face as I squeezed her hand. No, honey. You did nothing wrong. Nothing at all. My stomach hurts so much, she whimpered. It feels like fire inside. I know, Willow Tree, I said, using the nickname I'd given her as a baby. The doctors will fix it. You just stay strong for me. At the hospital, doctors rushed Willow into emergency surgery. The bullet had torn through her small intestine, damaged her liver and lodged near her spine. For 7 long hours, I paced the waiting room in borrowed scrubs, my own clothes taken as evidence, praying for my daughter and planning to use every legal power I had against Barbara Evans. District Attorney Sarah Jones arrived during the 4th hour, her face serious and determined. Mike, she said, guiding me to a quiet corner. I came as soon as I heard. How is Willow? Still in surgery, I said, my voice hollow. The bullet hit her stomach, damaged several organs. Sarah, I want maximum charges. Everything possible. She nodded. Attempted murder, assault with a deadly weapon, child endangerment, illegal discharge of a firearm in a residential area, hate crime against a disabled person. We'll get her, Mike. She'll be in prison for many years. She shot my little girl in the stomach over flowers, Sarah. Flowers. I know, she said softly. And the community is outraged. The news is already calling her HOA Karen, and using your title in the headlines. The support for Willow is overwhelming. But legal punishment felt empty as I waited to learn if my daughter would live. My wife had died in a car accident when Willow was just 3, leaving us to face everything together. Her medical treatments, learning to use a wheelchair, fighting for school accommodations. Through it all, Willow stayed bright and hopeful, never letting her disability stop her from living life fully. Sheriff Taylor? The surgeon finally came out, removing his mask. His face gave nothing away. Willow made it through surgery. We removed the bullet, repaired the damage to her intestines and liver. She's stable but in critical condition. The next 48 hours are crucial. Relief hit me so hard I almost fell. Can I see her? For a few minutes. She's in recovery. Willow looked so small in the hospital bed, surrounded by machines and tubes. Her usually rosy cheeks were white as paper. A thick bandage covered her stomach where the bullet had entered. I sat beside her, holding her hand in both of mine, and finally let myself break down completely. I'm so sorry, Willow, I whispered. I should have protected you better. News about the shooting spread quickly. By morning, the hospital waiting room was filled with Willow's school friends, our neighbors, and every off-duty officer from my department. Flowers, stuffed animals, and cards piled up. News vans parked outside, reporters eager for the story. HOA president shoots sheriff's disabled daughter over flower picking. The reporter from Channel 5 caught me in the hospital cafeteria. Sheriff Taylor, is it true Barbara Evans shot your daughter in the stomach because she was picking flowers? My daughter was picking flowers for a science project about plant life cycles, I said, my voice tight with controlled anger. Mrs. Evans approached her with a gun and shot her in the abdomen at close range. Willow is 13 years old and uses a wheelchair. She posed no threat to anyone. Barbara Evans was denied bail. Her husband, a local businessman, hired an expensive lawyer who tried to claim she felt threatened by Willow, a claim that made the judge visibly angry. Your client felt threatened by a 13-year-old girl in a wheelchair picking flowers? He asked in disbelief. Threatened enough to shoot her in the stomach? The hospital became our home for the next 3 weeks. Willow fought through infections, fever, and pain. The bullet wound in her stomach developed complications, requiring 2 more surgeries to repair all the damage. During her worst night, when her fever hit 104, I sat beside her bed, holding her hand and telling her stories about her mother, how brave she was, how Willow had the same fighting spirit. Don't leave me, Willow Tree, I whispered, watching the bandages on her stomach rise and fall with each breath. You're all I have left. Slowly she began to improve. The wound in her stomach started to heal properly. Each day brought small victories, fever breaking, infection clearing, eating solid food again. The day she smiled for the first time, 3 weeks after the shooting, was the day I finally believed she would fully recover. Dad, she said weakly, touching the bandage on her stomach, will I have a big scar? Yes, I said honestly. But scars are just marks of battles we've survived. Like my surgery scars from spina bifida? Exactly. Just another sign of how brave you are. Barbara's trial began 2 months later. The evidence against her was overwhelming. Security cameras from our house and neighbors' homes had recorded the whole incident, clearly showing Barbara aiming directly at Willow's midsection before firing. Her own HOA violation notices showed a pattern of targeting Willow, citations for her wheelchair ramp, for the adaptive swing I'd installed in our backyard, for the raised garden beds I'd built so she could grow plants from her wheelchair. Emails recovered from Barbara's computer revealed her true feelings. "These people with their special needs are ruining our property values," she'd written to another HOA board member. "The Taylor girl's wheelchair and equipment make our community look like a hospital zone." Willow insisted on testifying, wheeling herself to the witness stand despite still being weak from her surgeries, the scar on her stomach still fresh and pink. "Mrs. Evans told me disabled children shouldn't be allowed in Sunny Creek Estates," Willow testified, her voice soft but clear. "She said I made the neighborhood look bad and scared away home buyers. When I told her the flowers were for my science project, she said my project didn't matter. Then she pulled out a gun and shot me in the stomach." The courtroom was silent as Willow lifted the edge of her shirt just enough to show the scar from the bullet wound and explained how the shooting had affected her life. The pain, the nightmares, the new fear of going outside. Barbara's expensive lawyer tried to suggest Willow had been disrespectful or threatening. Willow just looked at him calmly. "Sir, I've had 17 surgeries in my life. I've spent more time in hospitals than on playgrounds. I've been stared at, excluded, and bullied. But until Mrs. Evans, no one ever thought I deserved to be shot in the stomach for picking flowers." The jury took just 2 hours to find Barbara guilty on all charges. The judge, looking at Barbara with cold eyes, sentenced her to 9 years in state prison. "You shot a disabled child in the stomach because she picked flowers," the judge said. "Your actions show a shocking disregard for human life, especially the life of someone more vulnerable. This court finds that unforgivable." As they led Barbara away, she looked back at me. "I didn't know you were the sheriff," she said, as if that would have changed anything. "And I didn't know monsters lived in our neighborhood," I replied. "Now we both know." The day we finally came home from the last hospital stay, a surprise waited for us. The entire neighborhood had gathered on our lawn and driveway. Mrs. Patterson, our elderly neighbor, stepped forward holding a document. "We've removed Barbara from the HOA board," she announced. "And we've changed the rules. From now on, all homes in Sunny Creek Estates must be accessible to everyone. We're calling it Willow's Law." Tears filled my eyes as neighbors came forward to sign the new HOA agreement. They had replaced the neighborhood's gravel paths with smooth concrete for easier wheelchair access, installed ramps at the community pool, and planted a special section in the community garden, Willow's Corner. The sign read, "Pick all the flowers you want." That evening, Willow sat in our backyard looking at the stars, one hand resting gently over the scar on her stomach. "Dad," she said quietly, "something good came from something terrible, didn't it?" I looked at my brave daughter, still healing but stronger in spirit than ever, and nodded. "Yes, Willow Tree. That's how change often happens." 6 months after the shooting, I returned to work with a new mission. I started mandatory disability awareness training for all officers. We created a community program connecting disabled residents with resources for home modifications. We established a special response team for reports of discrimination. Willow became the face of our campaign, speaking at schools about inclusion and kindness. The local paper ran our story with the headline, "HOA Karen shot fire to my disabled girl's stomach, unaware I'm county sheriff, how one family's tragedy changed a community." Today, 1 year after the shooting, Willow wheeled herself into the new community garden. She still has pain sometimes from the stomach wound, and gets tired more easily than before. But she insisted on planting new flowers, bright yellow sunflowers that she said, "Always look up, no matter what." As I watched her carefully plant each seed, I thought about how close I came to losing her, and how her courage had changed everyone around us. "The seeds are like people, Dad," Willow said, looking up with her bright blue eyes, one hand unconsciously touching the scar on her stomach. "Sometimes they need to go through dark times before they can grow into something beautiful." From the worst day of our lives came something we never expected. A community that finally saw my daughter not for what made her different, but for what made her extraordinary.